All right, let's get fired up, guys. How's it going? It is me again. It All Starts with the Guys Up Front podcast. We're feeling pretty good. We had 13 views on our second video. We are just joining the soup line here for YouTube views. And we're feeling pretty darn good about it. Let's look at the next game. We're going to be in London this time, where the Vikings will play the Cleveland Browns. And the Vikings are staying in Europe, the UK, for the second week in a row. This was planned by them, and it's an interesting strategy. We saw this with the Jaguars 2 times. In 2023, they won both games, and in 2024, they dropped the first game to the Bears. Then they beat the Patriots. So I think there is something to be said about the time zone difference, acclimating to the UK for 2 weeks, being overseas, that sleep schedule, all that jazz. So I think that's going to be a little bit of an edge for the Vikings here. I will say, if this game was in Cleveland, I'd probably go with the Browns, as we saw them play really well at home and beat the Packers. But let's dive right into it. When we're looking at this game, I look at the Vikings. They've had a lot of injuries on their offensive line. They have a PFF pass block grade that's 13th ranked at 62.5. Now, I'd move this down to, say, 20th ranked, because they're getting a downgrade at center and right tackle with Judkins and School filling in for Kelly and O'Neal, respectively. And that's about 10 to 15 PFF points lower with their pass block grade. They've had a rash of injuries on their O-line. And this is going to affect their rush game too, obviously, one would assume, with run blocking. And when you look at, against the Ravens and Lions, who are top 15 with pass block, and they have dynamic offenses usually, the Browns couldn't do too much in terms of having their pass rush affect the game. They were just getting down by too many points. Though against Green Bay, who has the 23rd ranked pass block grade, the Browns held them to their lowest scoring output of the year, and they won 13-10. Tucker Kraft was limited in that game. But I think there's something to be said about the Browns having the home field advantage there, too. But again, Minnesota has the travel advantage here, we had mentioned. Pittsburgh had that top 5 blitz and pressure rate, which was much more challenging for Wentz than he faced, with Cincinnati. The Vikings made this a game late, but they definitely struggled a lot of times. Wentz faced a lot of pressure. He didn't do that great against it. Cleveland is more like top 14 in these categories, so not as elite as Pittsburgh in a pass rush pressure metric, although PFF grades them as the top overall defense and rush defense, with top 7 in coverage and tackling. So PFF likes them, even though the real pressure metrics show that they're not quite as good as Pittsburgh, but they're high, and they blitz more than Cincinnati as well, about middle of the pack. And DVOA has the Browns more of a pass funnel defense, so they're really good at stopping the run. They're first in DVOA against the rush, so things should be tough for Jordan Mason. I mean, they really stifled Derrick Henry when they played the Ravens. And so I think Jordan Mason's going to have a tougher time here. Pittsburgh was also ranked 20th or worse against the rush and the pass with DVOA, and 22nd in coverage. So you figure the Vikings are going to have a tougher time running the ball. Wentz will place a little bit better of a secondary as well with the Browns. And Wentz really struggled to move the ball early. But one thing that benefits Wentz against the Browns here is, like Rodgers, he's had a pretty quick release. So that's how you mitigate that pass rush. And so Minnesota's going to have to work on that short passing game. And I think they're going to struggle at times, but they do have Justin Jefferson, who's elite against man coverage. So I do think Jefferson's going to be able to help Minnesota move the chains a little bit. especially maybe later in the game, sort of like they did against Pittsburgh in desperation. But one thing that's also going to limit Minnesota this game, I don't think they're going to put up 21 points in this game like they did against Pittsburgh, is that the Browns play man about half the time, which is about, top 5, 10 in the league, where the Steelers and the Bengals play more zone. So Wentz is going to have to still face a pretty good pass rush, and he's going to, like the Steelers, but now he's got a man defense, which historically he's been a little more up and down against. If you're a drop back quarterback, short passing game, zone's a little easier, right? You can throw it to your backs and your tight ends, your slot receivers. With man defense, it's a little more tricky for these receivers to get open unless they're dynamic like a Justin Jefferson. So I do think Minnesota will struggle a little bit more offensively. I do think the Browns will get a few sacks, probably several sacks in this game like Pittsburgh did. And I do think Minnesota will score like 10 to 17 points here. So you might be thinking, why would I take the Vikings, especially with these offensive line injuries? And I will say I think it's going to be an ugly game when we're looking at it as well. Joe Flacco has not been playing well. The Vikings have a good pressure rate on defense and a pretty good blitz rate as well. So it's sort of like Pittsburgh when you look at that top 5, top 7 in those categories, pressure and blitz. But the difference is Rodgers has had a quick release, which has been great for him. So Flacco has not. He's been holding onto the ball way too long. That's going to hurt the Browns, and the Browns also don't have a dynamic receiver like DK Metcalf. They're worse. They're ranked worst in the league in PFF receiving grade. So I think they're going to have a really tough time moving the football, throwing the ball. Vikings also are top 10 in coverage. Where you can move against Minnesota is in the rushing game. They're 16th in PFF grade, 15th in DVOA. And Cleveland can run the ball with Judkins, but the problem is they're not passing the ball well. They don't, Flacco's holding onto the ball too long. They're going up against a good pass rush. And Judkins isn't getting too much of anyone blocking for him. But I think he's going to be able to move the ball. Like Kenneth Gainwell last week had over 90 yards rushing. So that was really impressive. But I think it speaks to how you can run on Minnesota. So if I'm coaching the Browns, I'm really just handing it to Judkins like a lot. But I do think, that can only work for so long unless Judkins really takes over this game. I think what I'm trying to say is Flacco is going to hold them back. So you look at Pittsburgh, they scored 24 points last week. I'd say kind of take away that Metcalf play. Now they've got 17. All right. And Rodgers had a pretty nice day against Minnesota with those quick releases. So what I think is going to happen here is I think the intangibles are going to help out the Vikings. I think the Browns, it's hard not to be a little sloppy when you're traveling overseas. It's a little bit of a time change. It's different. The Vikings are used to that, playing on that international stage. They already did it last week. They lost a close one. I'm sure they want to get a win here. And let's see here. I think it's also going to be the Browns, just Flacco has not been doing well. Like I said, he's not delivering, but you got to get Judkins the ball. I like Judkins to get 50-plus rushing yards. I also think Jefferson can get his standard chain moving 7 for 75 type of receiving line. And I think that the Vikings are going to win an ugly game here, 16-13. And let's see if I have any other last notes as I look through my notes on this game here that I want to include. I think that will be pretty much it. Just how I expect more of an ugly game, both teams to be more limited. Oh, yeah, definitely. So if I was doing a teaser for this game, which I kind of like teasers more, like try to be as conservative as you can with these plays because this stuff is so hard to predict. But I would say like Judkins, 50-plus rushing yards. I would say, Minnesota probably plus 3.5. The Browns haven't won by more than 3, but I do like the Vikings to win. But I would also say, give me under 45.5, under 47.5, because that was the total for the Vikings and Steelers last week. I think this is a very similar game, except I think Rodgers is a little better throwing the ball than Flacco, and I think the Browns defense is a little better than the Steelers defense, especially playing more man. So I think Flacco will be the X factor here to limit the Browns. Where Wentz, he can make those quick throws. He's gonna be under pressure a lot. They're gonna have to punt a lot. He's gonna take his sacks, but I think the Vikings can do just enough here. Even though I think Jordan Mason should be suppressed here too, but I just think the Vikings having this international advantage in Wentz throwing quicker than Flacco will help, as both teams will generate pressure here. But I think it's going to be ugly. I really do. I'm way more confident in the under here. I would in the like when I teased it, obviously the under 45.5. But I definitely more confident in the under, and I'm not super confident in Minnesota, but I think because it's this international stage, I give them that edge. But again, I'm not super confident. If this game was in Cleveland, I think that's the 3-point difference. If this game was in Cleveland, I would be thinking more like 16-13 Browns, But because it's on that international stage, I do like the Vikings here. What I say here, I like the Vikings 16-13. All right, so that is your preview for Browns and Vikings with our DVOA analytics. And be on the lookout for the next podcast. We'll be looking at some of the games. And let me know what you guys think. Definitely want to stick with DVOA, how quarterbacks do under pressure. And injuries are huge too, because if the Vikings offensive line was fully healthy here, I'd give them a little bit more confidence as well here. All right. Thank you guys, and good luck.